Okay, great. It's good to see so many people here this morning. Thank you for coming bright and early. As you can see here, we have various speakers arranged for today. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we start. If you can keep your microphones muted, that would be great. There's quite a few of us on the call today, and we all have experience in hearing people making cups of tea and whatnot. This will be recorded, like I say, so please just change your name if you don't want to be on the recording. During the meeting, if you want to ask any questions to any of the speakers, the chat function will be available, which will be on the screen at the bottom. If you send that message to Sarah Jordan, who is our host today from the Biosphere, if you are joining by browser instead of by the app, then you won't be able to message Sarah directly, but if you just put your message into the group chat, then we'll get to it at the end for the Q&A. Also as well, some of our speakers today from 361 Energy and from Plastic Free Devon, if you want to have more of a personalised chat with them rather than asking something particular about your business to the whole group, we're going to have breakout rooms with those two and possibly with the area of outstanding natural beauty and with Exmoor as well. So if you want to be put in a particular room with them at the end to have more of a chat rather than a question and answer session, you can message Sarah and just say, I want to be put in breakout room with the person that you want to have breakout room with. That's just really quickly the running order for today. I'm sure you've all seen that on the Eventbrite anyway. We are going to have a quick 5-minute break in the middle, and it will be sharp. So there's a chance to get refreshments and whatnot, but it is going to be a very tight break. Thanks. So I'm going to start today. I'm just going to give you a brief overview of the project and what we've managed to achieve so far, largely from the university side, and then our other partners will fill you in with the rest of the details as well. So what is biocultural heritage? Hopefully, quite a few of you have been engaged in the project already. I might have possibly seen me speak about it at the North Devon Marketing Bureau as well. But it's an Interreg project for UNESCO biospheres, 2 in the north of France and 2 in the south of England. These have quite similar properties, characteristics to each other as far as landscapes are concerned. So there's some good shared learning going on between the 4. The 3 elements of biocultural heritage, bio is the natural assets of the area, so the landscape and the diversity. The cultural elements are, the festivals, the practices that we have, and then the heritage aspects of the historical aspects. So if you put all of that together, that's the historical assets and cultural practices developed over time, which are intrinsically linked to the landscape. So, this could be maritime heritage, food festivals, walking trails, whatever it might be. So what are we doing? We've developed a new charter for businesses to promote and protect heritage, culture and natural environment. Sarah will be talking about this in a later PowerPoint. 3 networking meetings. These were originally planned for 2020, but unfortunately the coronavirus has shut these down for the time being. So we're planning on doing these in person now in 2021, hopefully, if the virus allows us to. We're going to be designing and implementing new immersive experiences. These are going to be based at various hotspots around the biosphere. So we're going to be basing them in Simmons Bath, Salton Sands, but also where we've been helping some of the businesses in the area through business coaching to be able to develop some of these as well. We've got some really interesting ideas going with the businesses, so I'm interested to see how they'll develop over the next 12 months as well. And then there's also a more academic side of things where we've been mapping tourist flows in an interactive map and highlighting new areas of opportunity, as well as trying to educate visitors and businesses about responsible tourism, and make sure that tourism isn't so damaging to the natural environment and the culture and the heritage of the area. So we ran a big survey 420 people took part in the survey, and this was at various sort of key tourist destination places in North Devon. 60% turned out to be tourists and 40% turned out to be residents. So we got a nice sample of local impressions of tourism as well as the visitors themselves. All of this analysis was done by my colleague, Dr. Carolyn Peterson. So this isn't my work. I can't claim this. And then the survey was also conducted by students at Petrox. So thank you to them. I'm just going to go through a few of the basic findings of the survey as well. So as you can see here, there's almost a perfect split between people who are staying overnight and people who are coming for the day. This is all survey participants, so this could be residents or visitors. Here's a breakdown of age. What we found is it's sort of in North Devon at least steadily moving up from youngest to oldest. There is a note though that the 18 to 24-year-olds, they were mainly residents, and if they were a tourist, they were mainly visiting with their family anyway. So there would have been people in this older age group as well with them. So that's just an interesting thing to think about as well. This is how many nights they tended to stay. So we've separated the residents out in this chart. So you can see that most of the people who are staying 5 to 7 nights, which is really encouraging. Some of the other biospheres, 2 nights or 1 night was considerably higher. So it's good to see that people, occasionally are staying, possibly 2 weeks. Long weekends. So this is encouraging to see that, that there's not too many people who are only staying 1 night. Just a couple of quick more facts about it. The most common group size were smaller groups. This is including the residents as well. But 29% of the people will come in groups of 4 to 6, which is really encouraging. So that suggests that a lot of families are coming. 19% visiting alone. These tended to be the residents who were kind of, going out for a walk during the day or something like that. Here's who people visited with. So 26% with partner, 27% with friends, and 26% with family. Those who stayed 1 to 2 nights and visiting in smaller groups spend more, as well as those who expressed a very or extremely strong interest in the natural environment. So these tend to be people who are, coming for the weekend because their holiday is quite short rather than 8+ days. They like to spend quite a lot when they're there. They'll eat out several times and buy souvenirs and whatnot, and pay for experiences as well. This one's interesting. This is what people stated their motivation was for nature. And as you can see, there was the majority of people in North Devon suggested that it was extremely important to them. Whereas hardly any people suggested that nature was not at all important. We ran this for culture and heritage as well, and all of these results will be available in the future. I just thought that this one was interesting because it is so strong, particularly these 2 groups here, very important and extremely important. So, building this into your marketing messages as a business is really important because, the vast majority of people who are coming really consider nature to be a strong drive in them coming. Apologies that there's quite a lot on this graph. I hope that you can see it. The most popular activities were kind of nature driven, walking, but then 12% of people did come for heritage or a historical attraction. Lots of family days out and picnics. But as you can see here, the beach obviously was quite popular. Coming to pubs, sightseeing, walking, heritage. So it's good to see that there is a wide spread as well. But most of them are around sort of nature, walking, having a day out with the family in nature. Just quickly as well, we asked several questions about whether or not people thought that tourism had a positive or negative effect. And, you know, we asked this to the residents as well. 39% of respondents stated that it had a positive or very positive impact, with only 19% stating it had a negative or very negative impact. So the next stage on from this, we took the survey results and we did a cluster analysis on them. I won't bore you with the details of how we did this, but we took some of the factors involved, and we created what we called a BCHT motivational score. This was their willingness to pay for activities which have a BCHT element to them, and how driven they were to go and do these. And this was a combination of different things. You know, we sort of took what was the ideal number of nights people would stay, and we put them all into a formula, which came out with 6 personas, 6 different types of people who visited the area, each who had their own habits and values and behaviours. And this was some of the work that I was doing during the lockdown. So when we go through these, if you have a think about which groups you currently attract to your business, and which you'd like to appeal to in the future, you know, again, these will be publicly available soon. We'll be able to send these out. They just need a little bit of a finishing touch to them, let's say. Also, just to note, we took the residents out of this, and we put them in their own group. So there's 5 groups of tourists and 1 group of residents. So let's take a look at them now. So the group with the highest BCHT score weren't necessarily the largest group. They were 19% of the tourists that visited, but we called these exploring families. These are families that have children sort of age maybe 10 plus up to teenagers who, you know, like to go out and do activities while they're here. They typically stay for a week, and they typically stay in self-catering accommodation. But they do spend a lot of money on activities, and particularly educational activities around heritage and around the natural environment. And they were highly motivated to do this in nature as well. You know, this group tend to visit in school holidays, you know, due to the kids being in school. So they're not very flexible on when they do come. But when they do come, like I said, they like to spend quite a lot of money doing activities. The second group are the empty nesters. This is 22% of the tourists who came to the area. And again, they had a very high BCHT score because they were very willing to spend money, particularly around like traditional foods, and doing activities as well. They tend to stay in self-catering or hotels and B&Bs, and they value luxury as well. So they can afford, now that the kids have left for uni or started jobs and moved out, they can afford to take lots of smaller breaks, you know, long weekends, and spend quite a lot of money while they're there as well, because there's less of them now. They're quite used to paying for a holiday with, you know, 4 or 5 people involved, and now there's only 2 of them. So they like to spend quite a lot of money. So they're a good group to attract, particularly for the hotels and B&Bs, because they were the strongest group of users for the hotels and B&Bs. The next group that we found, again, it wasn't the largest group, 14%, but they did have a very strong desire to be in nature, and we called these free and adventurous couples. These are people that, you know, occasionally, or well, you know, about a third of the time will come and stay in a camper van, and they'll be doing adventure activities. They'll be doing coast steering, walking along the coast, running, cycling, rock climbing, things like this. They tend to stay 3 to 4 nights, and they either sort of follow the same idea that the empty nesters do. So they come for a mini break and they value luxury, or they're in their camper vans and they're going out and getting muddy on their bikes and things like that. They tend to stay 3 to 4 nights. They do spend less overall if they are staying in their camper vans. But when you do get the ones who are, you know, outdoor enthusiasts, they do spend quite a lot of money on activities and equipment, quite a lot of specialist equipment as well, bike repairs and things like this. And then these are the last 3. We've got comfort and convenience families, 17% of tourists. they came out with a medium to low BCHT score, and we think that this is mainly because they value convenience and they value comfort, because they have very young children, sort of toddlers or newly born, and they come to holiday parks quite a lot, and they won't venture too far. They love being in nature, they love giving their kids a good time in nature, and they love going to the beach as well. But they tend to stay reasonably close to their accommodation, just in case they need to nip home for anything, or they'll have quite a lot of equipment with them, prams and things like this. So their lower daily spend does tend to be lower, and they don't tend to spend too much on specialist activities, mainly because their children might be quite young and not at the stage where they're going to be learning a lot. So they like just going to the beach, having a nice time in nature, and often taking advantage of the on-site entertainment of holiday parks. These are still a great group of tourists to attract. It's just that during our sort of cluster analysis, they came out a little bit lower. And this is a similar result with relaxing retirees, we called them. This is actually the largest group, and there's absolutely no problem with attracting these people. They came out with a low BCHT score because they don't tend to go and do a lot of paid activities. They like leisurely strolls, and stay in well, these were the highest group of caravan stayers, but a lot of them come for B&Bs. But what is crucial about this group is these are the ones that were staying 8+ days a lot of the time. Some of them were saying they were staying 14 days, 15 days, and they mainly travel with their partners, but occasionally we did come across people who were traveling on an organized tour as well. So this was an interesting group still. It's interesting that they're the largest group of tourists, and because their holidays are spread out so much, their daily spend might be lower than the people who are only staying 2 days, but they still are spending a little bit here or there. And then we had the residents and day trippers. They actually came out with a surprisingly low BCHT score because they were highly motivated to be in nature, but a lot of them stated that they had little to no understanding of it, which is surprising, that you would think that people who were from the area might have a better idea of the landscape. This might be, in a lot of surveys, people are quite, they downplay, let's say, their understanding because they see it every day. They might consider it, slightly mundane maybe, but yeah, just a surprising result there that they were saying that they had a low understanding of nature compared to other groups. And they mainly come for exercise, but they don't spend money obviously on their day out, if they're a local resident going for a walk. So that their score, their BCHT score came out lower, but they still are highly driven to be in nature. So that's an interesting finding, at least. So I think that's all from me. Yeah. So what I'll do is I'll spotlight Andy Bell, who's the manager of North Devon Biosphere. Ask him to unmute.
Okay, thank you, Ian.
Over to Andy.
Thank you very much. That's some really sort of good information that the survey presented. So what I want to do here is just focus on what we do as a UNESCO designation, and then we'll be followed by Jenny, who manages the AONB, and talking about what they do from a destination, then Dan from Exmoor National Park. So we all work together and brush along really well, and we've got some partnership projects on each of the sites. So what I want to do is just sort of focus on what we do as a UNESCO site and take it from there. So next slide, please. So the very astute of you would have seen this sign coming up the A361 on the link road. It took us a lot of bargaining to get that from the county council and get it in place, but finally we did it after about 10 years of haggling with them. But welcome to North Devon, to UNESCO Biosphere. What does that mean? You're one of the top 700 sites in the world for this type of designation, And it's all about living in harmony with nature and how to get the tourism activity to work with that. But what we really need to do is really celebrate how unique and how really important that designation is. So if you go to the next slide, please. So our main sort of remit as an organisation, if you like, is to sort of maintain the product of the area. That's, you know, what is the real environmental assets that people are coming for, which is what Ian had alluded to in these slides, was saying most people are coming for that environmental characteristics. And we also help the public authorities plan for sustainable tourism, so influencing the policies where we can, using science-based research, the master planning that Ian's talked about within that previous presentation. And, you know, we want to sort of grow the, if like, the good part of tourism, because putting tourism all into one pot is fine, and saying tourism doesn't impact on the landscape. Well, there are elements of tourism that does, but there's some that doesn't, and some really works well with it. We want to enhance and work with the part that doesn't really sort of damage the environment. And of course, what we want to do is work with those businesses themselves and help them to get the best out of the area and how to make our environment work for us. So we support it. There's that kind of mutual feedback between economic activity and conservation of the environment. So the idea of using the biocultural assets, it's a clunky term, but really it is about what is the practices, what is the traditions that have made this place as good as it is, and how do you keep it going? So what's our link with the environment? How do you make that work? So next slide, please. So of course, this is just a quick run through set of pictures, you know, what we really are famous for, you know, the big spaces, next slide. And, you know, the estuary and the two boroughs either side of the estuary mouth, you know, fantastic sites. And the next slide. And of course, we work with partners like the National Trust. And then there's all that area inland, you know, coming up the estuary, we've got sort of Bideford area, sort of the Target Trail, moving much further inland again. This is up near Heartland. This is Powler's Piece. So into that calm grassland area. And of course, we've got the underwater area like Lundy, you know, it's got sunset cup corals, next slide. And things like Tompop Bennies, which, you know, if you're diving, we've got quite a big sort of diving tourism area in this area. And then we've got our weird things. So this is the freshwater pearl mussel. So this is the longest lived invertebrate in the UK. And we've got a special population here that's not genetically linked to anyone anywhere else in the country. It's more linked to northern France and Spain. And then recognize these guys, the Clovelly herring. And what we've recognized with our research in the marine part is that the Clovelly herring is actually different from every other type of herring in the Irish Sea and Bristol Channel. So we've got a special species here that we need to manage and take care for. So we've got all those things which are kind of, we recognize as being everyday, kind of what we come across, but we have some really special things as well. And the trick about BCHT is to say, well, all of these things are new to the visitors that come to the area, whether it is new to us or not, but they are special. They're special to other people. And how do you make that into a tourism product? And that's really what we're trying to celebrate. And we've got our cultural links as well. So things like James Revilius and the photographs that he took back in the 80s, 70s, 80s, 90s, just before he died, when, you know, that was recording life in our area. And it's those practices that link us to these places. And the next slide. And of course, there is our food on the next slide. And, you know, the festivals as well. So all of these things make up that culture of North Devon that links it to the place. And this is what we're trying to put together a market. So what do we do as an organization? We've got the Biosphere Partner Scheme, which Sarah's going to talk about. The next thing in our program here is we want to develop a visitor management app. And this was originally set for the soft, sensitive sites that could be prone to too much pressure from visitors. But what we recognized immediately after the last sort of COVID easement, when there was masses of people came down, that everywhere was getting swamped. You know, the Saunton Sands was getting full by 9:30. That was causing backlogs and traffic jams in Braunton itself. So what I'd like to work with people in the area about is how do we make a visitor management app that helps diffuse some of those problems, spreads the load out, and means that we can open up areas of countryside inland, spread the economic benefit, but also means we don't get those high pressure areas suffering that we had during this summer. So if you want to talk to me about that into the main event after the presentations, I'll be pleased to hear it. And obviously with the rest of these things, supporting green development, tourism, etc., they're also naturally there. I don't want to rattle on too long because Sarah's got to come in fairly quickly with the business partner scheme, so I'll let her go on.
Thanks for that, Andy. So we'll just move on to Sarah now from North Devon Biosphere as well. And I'll spotlight you. Can you just unmute yourself, please, Sarah?
Thanks, Ian. Okay. Okay, so we're delighted to launch our Biosphere Business Partner Eco Charter. This is a sustainable business network within the UNESCO World Biosphere. So this Eco Charter is a free accreditation scheme where applications are initially accepted by the Biosphere team and then reviewed regularly by the network of businesses within it. Applying to become a Biosphere business partner is a simple process where applications are initially accepted by the Biosphere team. And you just need to choose at least 5 commitments to sign up to it. And these commitments fall within 3 different categories. So commitments in the conservation category range from things like reducing energy, waste or water consumption to providing opportunities for tourists to become involved in and understand local cultural practices, for example, hedge laying, dry stone walling or coppicing. The local development category includes commitments based around engaging and trading with other local sustainable businesses, promoting local sustainable produce or developing quality immersive tourism experiences that engage with the local environment and cultural heritage, for example, wildlife walks or a local history trail. Commitments within the awareness raising category include knowledge exchange and sharing best practice amongst network members, informing visitors of the impacts of tourism and promoting and taking part in events run by the Biosphere itself. These are just some of the examples of the commitments within each category. So in return for becoming a Biosphere business partner, your business will receive free advertising on our visitor webpage, use of our Biosphere business partner logo and invitations to networking events and meetings, which we are planning 3 of these to take place next year. We welcome your good news stories and ask you to drop us an email whenever a commitment has been reached. This can include photos or a short video, and these will be added to your business section of our visitor webpage for other business partners to view and will be included in our Biosphere newsletter. So from these good news stories, we will regularly choose a star business with a spotlight feature on our webpage as well. Next slide, please. And of course, you will also receive a Biosphere business partner certificate to display where your visitors can see it. And next slide. So we're really pleased that these businesses have already signed up, and we've had a slow launch really over the last few months. Our webpage has just gone live over the last 24 hours and it's currently undergoing some final tweaks. So we will be taking applications through our webpage within the next week or so. If you are interested in signing up, just keep an eye on your inbox because I'll be sending out an email to all attendees once the webpage has been tested. And the webpage, I think, is on the previous slide. But it's www.biosphere.org.uk. And that's all from me. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Sarah. For some reason, the slideshow has stopped. Let's just bring it back up. So next we have Jenny. Let me find you on the list, Jenny. And spotlight you. So you should just have it. There we go. Welcome, Jenny. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Good morning, everyone. Next slide, please. So just a quick reminder of where the areas of outstanding natural beauty are. It's the coastal strip running from the border with Exmoor in the north right down to the border with Cornwall in the south, running across the main coastal beaches. sorry. But it is quite a thin strip, and a lot of people think it's more wider than it is, but you can see the whole Heartland Peninsula is in there. So what is an area of sorry, next slide then. What is an AONB? It's a national designation, it's provided with protection through legislation and policy relating to both planning and to developments, and it contains a lot of protected wildlife areas. When we talk about this duty, sorry, could you keep the slide still? The duty to conserve and enhance natural beauty, what are we talking about? So there's 4 areas of natural beauty. We're talking about the landscape, and we have a stunning landscape along this coast. We're talking about the geological features that make that landscape. We're talking about the wildlife, from the plants to the birds, to the mammals, etc. And we're also talking about the historic and cultural environment. So what can the AONB offer tourism businesses? Sorry, can you keep this slide still? Thank you. So basically, we're trying to keep the area very beautiful by protecting it through our advice on planning to the local planning authorities. We're an advisory group. And
sorry, Carey, they seem to have a mind of their own, but I'll try and keep it on as much as I can. Sorry about this.
So we advise on planning, we don't make decisions, but we also recognise that it's an important living and working landscape.
Sorry about this, Jenny.
Right, I'll just ignore the slides and talk about what I was going to talk about. We have a partnership of 20 organisations and 10 community representatives who oversee what we do. And we have a management plan, and you can see all the information on that on our website. So apart from the planning advice, we also provide interpretation materials, both physical on site, like boards and interpretation posts along the coast path. We develop walks leaflets when we have funding available to do that, and those are available through the tourist information centres. And things like during COVID-19, we provided a load of downloads on our website so people could choose to move away from some of the very busy areas over this summer. Engagement is our other key feature. We want people to love, enjoy, but also respect the area. So we run a range of activities to help people understand the area and value it. Because we need people to care in the future to keep this place beautiful and available to everyone. And obviously a big priority has been about getting people outdoors. We have small grants that businesses can apply to. And again, you can see information on our website. And we do a load of promotion and awareness work through our social media, press and TV coverage. So I was just showing you a few examples there. If you can go back to the slides of the interpretation materials, the sort of thing that we produced a Discover the AONB map, which covered the nature in the area and heritage sites and links to downloadable walks. That's that one. And then the next one shows some of the interpretation from our heritage project related to World War II and Cold War heritage. So these ones are about Northern Boroughs, Baggy Point, and we also did a load of work in the Heartland area with a great hotspots leaflet that showed both Bronze Age sites, Iron Age sites, and more contemporary ones. And our final image is of Hillsborough Hill Fort above Ilfracombe, which is a heritage site, a scheduled monument, but also a local nature reserve. And you can see people there working with us to maintain and manage those sites so that tourists can come and visit them. And as Ian's work shows, the value to people of our heritage and culture is extremely important. So we work with partners to maintain these areas for the benefit of local people and for our visitors. So that's us in a nutshell.
Thanks, Jenny. Apologies that those slides started just moving on their own accord. And if anyone has any direct questions for Jenny as well, you know, if it's quite broad, we can discuss it in the Q&A, or if you'd prefer a more personalised chat, I'm sure that she'll be around at the end as well. So next up, we have Dan James from Exmoor. Dan, I'll spotlight you now.
Fantastic, great. Good morning, everybody. Hope you're all doing well. Thanks for the opportunity to share with you briefly today. A lot of what I'm going to say is going to be quite similar and follow on really from what Jenny said. And my role within the National Park is to lead a team that supports the rural economy of Exmoor in a way that benefits from and enhances our designation as a national park. Next slide, please. So first of all, what is a national park? Well, there are 15 national parks in the UK. 10 within England. Each one has a national park authority, and primarily we're a landscape designation. We're national assets. National parks are also kind of international icons, and we have that same purpose that Jenny has for the AONB to conserve and enhance the natural beauty, the wildlife and cultural heritage of the area. We also have a secondary purpose or a second purpose, which is around promoting opportunities for the public to understand and enjoy the special qualities of Exmoor. And in doing so, we've also got a duty to foster social and economic well-being. In many ways, those two purposes and that duty form the kind of traditional sustainability model of kind of the environment and the place, people and society, and prosperity and economy. Next slide, please. Okay, so Exmoor itself was designated back in 1954. It's probably one of the most remote and least accessible of all of the English national parks, which often surprises people when you look at kind of when you consider we're in southern England, but that is the case. We're also one of the smallest, so you know, we go as from Minehead along the coast up to Carmarthen, where we border with the AONB, and south down to Dulverton on the kind of Somerset Devon border, so 267 square miles. We're much less visited than many of the other national parks, compare us to somewhere like the Lake District or Peak District, but we have a much greater spend per visitor and a greater proportion of people actually staying in the area because of our kind of relative remoteness. And I think uniquely really within the national parks is tourism really does dominate us. It's 2/3 of our GVA and 2/3 of our employment within our rural economy stem directly from tourism. And I think the main attraction really is the interplay between the coast and the moors for us. That's the greatest draw for people, and we know that the landscape is the reason, you know, 95% plus of all of our visitors are coming because of the exceptional landscape we offer. We also offer other things such as we were the first dark sky within Europe, first dark sky reserve in Europe. We've got some of the highest coastal cliffs in the mainland UK, but it's that kind of interplay really between the coast and moors that really makes Exmoor quite unique. And obviously 1/3 of Exmoor is within Devon and overlaps, if you like, with the Biosphere Reserve boundaries. Next slide, please. So in terms of our role with tourism, I guess really our main aim is very similar to both Andy's and Jenny's really. It's around working with partners to help manage and market the park as a destination. But our own primary role as a National Park Authority is to look after the product. It's to look after the landscape that attracts so many people and provide access and information to that landscape. So we manage our rights of way network, we have 3 national park centres, all a range of things that you can see on the slide there. And I guess our primary way of achieving this is around balancing and facilitating. So we very much hold the glue together, and we kind of work with lots of different partners to try and balance that. Because obviously there can be a conflict between promoting opportunities for people to enjoy the area whilst also looking after a landscape, but it can be managed sensibly and sustainably, and that's our kind of core role, if you like. So very briefly, I just want to give you 5 top tips how your business can engage with and hopefully benefit from a national park. Next slide, please. Hopefully the next slide's coming, but the first tip, and sorry it's not quite showing properly on there as I'd intended, but that's fine. The first tip is around sharing the message using the Exmoor brand. So we have a unified Exmoor brand available to anybody that wants to promote their association with the area, and we know there's been a lot of research over several decades really that consistently shows that Exmoor is one of the top brands within the Southwest, both in terms of awareness but also in terms of people's interest in it. And the brand guidelines we have available on our website also link to suggested key messages and point you to various image types that you can use in your comms. And we've got a whole range of videos and photos that are available for you as a tourism business to make use of within your websites, within your promotional materials. Obviously, social media is a great way of kind of sharing those messages, as well as stocking some of our free literature, which ranges from the Exmoor Visitor, which is published annually as a kind of visitor newspaper, through to a whole range of pocket guides on all kind of specialist subjects, whether that's geology, wildlife, moorland birds, butterflies, etc. within the national park. Next slide, please. So the next kind of tip, if you like, is around showing how much you care. And again, apologies, these slides really aren't displaying at all how I'd formatted them, but hopefully you can just about read it. So one way of showing how much you care is becoming a national park partner. We know that Exmoor's a special place, and it's because it's of this, but it's a national park, and it's because of this that so many visit it each year. And the overwhelming majority of visitors absolutely respect and they love the area, and we've got a deep affinity to it. And therefore, our research has shown that visitors are positively influenced by and attracted to those businesses that demonstrate a link to the national park. So our park partner scheme, very similar to the new Biosphere scheme, really. It's been in place for about 5-6 years now, but it's a way of recognising and rewarding those businesses that work with a national park at the heart of what they do. There's 5 criteria for you to simply demonstrate how you're working, and I'll leave you to follow that up afterwards. All the information is on our website. We've also got Care More for Exmoor, which is our fundraising scheme. Last year, businesses and community organisations worked with us and raised over £50,000 towards vital conservation and access projects. So it's another way that you can demonstrate your care for the area. And we've just recently launched a new dark sky friendly business scheme for those businesses that are managing their lighting well and helping people to experience our dark skies. Next slide, please. So the third tip is about staying informed. You know, Exmoor is it's a living landscape, and it's an evolving landscape. It's evolved over thousands of years and continues to do so. And so we run a whole series of networking and training opportunities throughout the year. We have a tourism news that goes out every month. We publish our research. We've got our national park centres where you can go in and speak to our expert staff there. But it's just a way of making sure that you're constantly informed of what's happening within the national park, what new initiatives are happening, what opportunities there are for your guests to get out there and enjoy it. So for instance, in just a couple of weeks, we'll be launching a whole new range of new explorer walks, very much aimed at some of those target markets that Ian was talking about, around families looking for shorter but still very deep and meaningful experiences within nature. And so we've got some fantastic videos that we'll be launching to promote those in the next couple of weeks. So stay informed. Next slide, please. Hopefully the next slide is coming, but the fourth one is around promoting the experience. So this, obviously, I know it's all at the heart of the Biocultural Heritage Tourism Project, and for many years it's been a mainstay of our work on Exmoor. Some of you will be aware of Tim Wilkinson from the University of Exeter, who's been involved with your project, and he actually did his PhD with us, looking at how we move away from just promoting the special qualities to promoting the special experiences that Exmoor offers. And we want to help businesses to bring the stories of Exmoor to life. So it's much more than a pretty landscape, but it's something that you can immerse yourself in. And again, we've got a range of toolkits, a big project called National Park Experience Collection, where we're working with the other English national parks to promote those experiences, even things down to promoting our local produce and the experiences that offers. And then finally, the last tip, next slide please, is just to visit our website. We've got a whole plethora of information. It's been impossible really in the time slot today to really go into any detail, but if you visit exmoor-nationalpark.gov.uk/tourism, you should find access to all of our resources, toolkits, signposting to further information, and our contact details. So if you want to get in contact, and we're not precious about boundaries, we know that there are businesses outside of a park who benefit still from that association with the park, and everything we do is very much open to everybody. We know that the boundary is ultimately a fuzzy line on the map, so we're very much kind of powered by what the consumer wants. So thank you very much.
Thanks for that, Dan. I think what we're going to do now is have a quick 5-minute break. Just grab a cuppa or whatever. But we are going to make this quite sharp, and then we'll be back at 5 to with sustainability improvements, which will be with Nicola, Corrigan and Claire Moodie, and I'm going to try and sort this PowerPoint out so it behaves itself. But thank you everyone for the first part, and we'll see you in 5 minutes. Thanks. Okay, there we go. Sorry about the technical issues there. So our next part, I hope everyone is back. We'll just wait 30 seconds just in case. We're going to be hearing from Nicola Corrigan from 361 Energy, who we've had some contact with in the project already. I'm thrilled to have her, and Claire Moodie as well from Plastic Free Devon. So I'll just find Nicola on the list. There we are. And I will spotlight you.
Thank you.
I think that when I change slide, there might be a slight delay, but we're just going to have to work with that.
Okay.
So over to you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. My name is Nicola Corrigan. I'm a director at 361 Energy. So today I wanted to talk to you about reducing your carbon footprint. It's quite a lot of information to cover in 10 minutes. So I've included lots of links to resources and tools that will help you further. Next slide, please. So why should businesses be looking at net zero carbon, and what is the business case? I mean, we've heard lots today about people come here to visit the natural environment. So clearly there's consumer demand, and you know, that's only going to help to increase your revenue if you address those issues. It obviously saves money. It drives business efficiency if you're addressing waste and reducing your energy use, and also even small investments and retrofit and things like LED and energy efficiency technologies have a very quick payback. It's also future-proofing your business. Energy prices are only increasing. There's increasing regulation and carbon taxation, and also increasingly larger contracts, and people like local governments want to see that their supply chain suppliers are addressing these issues. It's obviously a big issue at the moment for the government post-COVID recovery. They've outlined their 10-point green plan, and they're really pushing green jobs and training. There's finance and funding out there for businesses who want to tackle this issue. It also helps with staff motivation and retention. You're upskilling and engaging your staff in this issue. Taking climate action is a very positive impact on the business, and can increase product and service innovation. And it's also helping your brand as well. So we heard today, you know, signing up with things like the Biosphere partnerships that are only going to help you stand out from the crowd. Next slide, please. So these are the sort of issues that you'll probably address as part of your carbon footprint. So that there's issues which are direct and indirect. So we call these scope 1, 2, and 3 issues, which I won't go into lots of details about now, but these are some of the things that you can start to address to reduce your carbon footprint in your business. Next slide, please. So where do you start? And my first piece of advice is really to start measuring things, so your energy and waste, and then you can quickly identify where you're wasting things and where you can reduce things. Get everybody involved in the business, right from the cleaners to the CEO. Everyone can help to identify issues and share ideas, and also conduct your carbon footprint. There's lots of online tools for this. I've included, I can't see it on the slide, Ian, but have included a link to the Carbon Trust, and they've got online tools for SMEs. So if you know where your biggest impacts are, then you can begin to address those issues first. So for instance, in the hotel industry, the biggest part of a carbon footprint can actually be your energy use, which can actually contribute about 60% of your footprint. And once you've done that, then you can set targets and actions on that and keep up with monitoring progress and momentum against those targets and actions that you've set. And then this will help you identify zero cost and low cost options, which is really the low hanging fruit, which you can then begin to save money and bring those savings either to invest elsewhere in the business or perhaps invest in energy efficiency technologies. Next slide, please. So energy. So really the first part to start looking at your carbon footprint is to start getting the data together from meter readings and energy bills. If you're lucky enough to have a smart meter at your business, you might be able to get your half-hourly data, which then you can see your on-peak and off-peak use. so you can really begin to see where you're wasting energy. And I've included a link there to walk around energy saving audits. So that's got lots of tips in there about where you can identify things to help reduce your energy use. So you can start with the simple measures, obviously get everybody to turn things off. So low cost things like draft proofing, radiator reflectors, timers and controls and saver plugs can all make a really big difference to reduce your energy use. And then if you want to look at making your business sort of immediately carbon neutral, you could go for a green tariff if you haven't reviewed your energy contract recently, and it will probably actually save you money as well. And then you can begin to invest in things like insulation, LEDs and efficient equipment and technologies. And then look at the bigger issues such as renewables and battery storage, so things like solar PV and low carbon heat options such as air source heat pumps. But you might be wondering how on earth you're going to sort of find the money for all this kind of thing. So there are green finance and loan options available, and also incentives such as tax relief through the Enhanced Capital Allowance Scheme, which is for energy efficiency technologies. And I also included some points there about looking at your water use at the same time. Next slide, please. So transport. So you might have a fleet of vehicles potentially, so you've got control over you know, the way that fuel's being used on site. Maybe you've got delivery drivers, so consider things like driver training, so that can have a big impact on the way that somebody drives around. If they're braking and accelerating, that's obviously going to increase fuel use. Post-COVID, obviously, we can promote car sharing, and we're all getting used now to working at home, so providing video conferencing facilities for staff can really help to drive down commuter travel. And also, some of you might be already aware of this, but employees can actually claim off their tax for working at home now. Also promote cycling. So you might want to join up to the Cycle to Work scheme. So that provides loans. So staff can buy bikes, and also Devon County Council have adult cycle training as well, which is free one-to-one training for people who aren't, you know, haven't been on a bike for a while. And obviously the big thing to do is to look at electric vehicles, and obviously that's a very big outlay, but is business leasing an option? So I've included a link there to a business leasing option. So perhaps your vans and cars, you might want to look at going over to electric, and you can get some, you know, some good deals for business leasing. Also promoting with your customers and your guests. Can you have cycle hire available? Promote alternative transport. Next slide, please. So I've included waste and purchasing together here, and because when you're buying things, you really need to think of waste as a waste of resource from your business. So when you're thinking about this, we need to think about what's called the waste hierarchy. So in the first instance, you really need to buy that item, so avoiding single-use items. Can you reduce the use of something? So for instance, in the hospitality industry, WRAP put out the figure that around 18% of food is actually wasted. Well, this is a wasted resource. There are other things that you could be doing, like menu planning, to help cut out waste from your business. Reuse and recycle. So can unused food or furniture be donated to charity? And with recycling, make sure there's clear signage, and make it easy for people to do that at your business. And then supporting local buying groups will help you drive down economies of scale. So there's lots of resources through the Southwest Food Hub or North Devon Food Co-op's really good resource for that. Using sustainable standards, and something that people often forget to think about is ethical investment. So where your banking can have a big impact on your climate and on your carbon footprint. So make sure that you're divesting away from fossil fuels and looking at ethical investments for your company pensions. Next slide. Biodiversity. So obviously we heard lots today about how people come here to visit our environment. and also getting involved in there's lots of environmental projects to get involved with locally. So not only does it do good, but also you can help promote your business as part of that, and it's sort of mutually beneficial for the organisation as well to promote that your business is part of that campaign. So for instance, I've been working with the Braunton Countryside Centre, and we have a local green map which has lots of information about local producers and sites to visit. And of course, obviously if you're doing things like tree planting, you're obviously going to offset some of your carbon from your business. Next slide. Education and awareness. So is it possible that there's somebody in the business who would want to become the green champion, or even set up a green team to make these things happen? So simple things around behaviour change can actually drive around 15% energy saving. So making sure that you're increasing the carbon literacy of your staff. So things like training, emails, posters, competitions, try and make it fun so everyone can get involved in this. Next slide, please. And there's our information if you'd like to get in touch with us. And we're going to be starting a new programme soon called Smarter Carbon. So if you'd like to become an early adopter of that, please do sign up. So we will be doing free energy audits and carbon footprinting audits. And then, yes, do get in touch with us if you'd like any more help. And I'll be pleased to talk in a bit more detail in the breakout sessions about sustainability advice for your business. Thank you.
Thanks for that. That was a really good talk. So let's move on. We've got Claire next from Plastic Free Devon. Let me just spotlight you. There you go. You're up. Thank you very much.
Hi everyone, and thanks for having me. So I'm here to talk to you about how the aims of Plastic Free North Devon fit within the biosphere and the biocultural assets that we're all looking to protect. So conservation and encouraging people to reuse and encouraging that culture of reduce and reuse kind of go hand in hand. And by working with us on quite a few different projects and joining with the campaigns, you're going to help us meet parts of that charter, including local economy, awareness raising, conservation, so reducing waste and recycling, and to help us meet our own mission. So our mission, in a bit of a nutshell, although it's quite long, is to protect and improve our environment through community-led action to help combat plastic pollution. We want to achieve this by helping people to recognise the relevance and value of the environment to their lives, to see and experience firsthand the impact of plastic pollution in nature, and to support good choices in purchasing, use and disposal of plastics as we move to a more sustainable community that recognises the result of consumption emissions. And we do this by working with local communities, businesses, organisations and government, local government, and we aim to raise awareness of the fragile natural environment, reduce the consumption of single-use plastics across North Devon, clear it from our coasts and waterways and countryside, recycle and dispose of it properly, and increase our knowledge and capacity to stimulate change. Next slide, please. And the next part of the presentation is going to really concentrate on why you should support our mission and how you can support our mission. Thank you. Next slide. So as you all probably aware, we obviously have a massive global plastic pollution crisis on our hands, and the sort of stuff that we see on our beaches, it's just kind of the tip of the iceberg. Plastic pollution is set to quadruple in the next 10 years, and it's kind of just said that there'll be more plastic in the ocean than fish by 2050. Next slide, please. And this is a result that we see on our local beaches. This is Croyd, just a few weeks ago, and the microplastic problem at the moment is just absolutely horrendous right the way across our beaches. And it's made up of kind of bio-beads, which are kind of pre-manufactured pallets from plastic factories. We've got bigger bits of plastic that are broken down into more angular pieces, bits of polystyrene, and all sorts of stuff. So that's kind of the state of what we're seeing at the moment, right the way across the tide line, right the way across North Devon beaches. Next slide. And then we have the next thing that's kind of our next challenge that's kind of appeared due to the COVID pandemic, which is kind of the new plastic pollution, which is PPE. Not so much finding it so much across our beaches, but definitely in our kind of more inland areas, in parks especially, along riverbanks. It's definitely becoming much more of a problem. Next slide. So how are you actually going to help us? So there's two ways that you could that you can help us. One is helping us spread awareness. And the other one is providing tools to your customers to facilitate a more sustainable economy. And one of the ways that you can raise awareness, a really easy one, is by joining the Visitor campaign. And this is a slide that kind of shows it here at the moment, which basically aims to connect with your visitors. So we had about 120 accommodation providers sign up this year, and it involves them sending information to their guests before they get here, which raises the profile of the biosphere, the kind of the special, the fact that it's a kind of a very special area that needs protecting, and then it gives them tips on the sorts of things that they need to think about when they come here. So that's remembering to refill your bottle, visiting plastic-free businesses, shopping locally, beach cleaning. So it has an array of pointers which we kind of improve on every year. This year we had a bit more of an online approach, and we didn't actually print the leaflets this year, but people could go onto our website and download kind of footers for their emails, and they could put a link to our website for those points. And then you also get a little badge to put on your website to promote that you're part of the campaign, which also I think your customers would obviously find quite attractive. Next slide. The other way that you can raise awareness, help us raise awareness, is providing a spot for us to develop some of our to do some of our activities. So we have a virtual reality ambassador and program where at the moment we're developing a couple of films that the AONB have funded for us that are going to be used to highlight the kind of the special bits of our area and encourage people to protect it and behave a bit more sustainably while they're here. We also have a water bar which stops people using single-use plastic water bottles. So this has been used at several sporting events and summer events throughout the summer the last couple of years, and it's been super successful in reducing the amount of single-use plastic water bottles that have been sold. And we also have a beach ambassador project, which basically involves us setting up a tent and running activities and talking to people about how they can reduce their plastic. Next slide, please. And then the most latest campaign that we've released is the Protect Our Playground, which you might have seen a little bit about. Over the last couple of weeks, we've had some quite strong media coverage. So this is about highlighting the issue of single-use polystyrene bodyboards. Well, they're not classified as single-use, but they often are single-use because they break after a few uses. Ocean Recovery Keep It and Tidy project have been running a campaign on this the last couple of years to raise the profile of how much waste is created and left on our beaches. So we developed this program, which is to encourage people to purchase wooden bodyboards or more sustainable types of bodyboards. And we piloted a hire project at Saunton this year. So we're going to be kind of expanding that this year into a few other locations, both at Croyd and into Willicombe. And we're also working with some holiday accommodation providers to actually put these boards into their accommodation providers so that when their guests come, they can actually use them rather than to feeling like they have to go out and buy one. So next slide, thank you. And then the other way that you can support us is by obviously actually reducing the plastic within your business and thinking about the sort of sustainability credentials that you provide to your guests. And we know that over the last couple of years, this is becoming much more important to people coming on holiday. They're looking for businesses that are trying to reduce their plastic waste and protect the environment that they're kind of hosting their business in. So there's one way. So first of all, it's reducing your plastic use, and we can facilitate you being awarded the Surfers Against Sewage Plastic-Free Communities award, which basically you get for reducing 3 single-use plastics, which is pretty easy to do and a really easy thing for you to apply to do. You can either contact your local plastic-free community, depending on what town or village you're in, or you can contact us and we can facilitate that. And then the other way is actually becoming a financial supporter to Plastic Free North Devon. So for between £20 and £40 a month, you can pay like a monthly fee to us, and you can obviously put that on your website. And we use that money to obviously develop our beach cleaning programs, our beach ambassador, VR, engagement, and the projects that we're kind of rolling on over the next couple of years. And that also involves us coming in, helping you do a bit of an audit, and not just look at plastic. We're kind of, at the moment, we're developing a kind of deeper tool that looks at kind of more broader sustainability issues in general. Next slide. So that's it from us. Like I said, there's a variety of ways that you can help support our mission, and I think it's in all our best interests that that we all tackle these issues together. So thank you for listening.
Thank you so much for both of those talks, Claire and Nicola. Some really practical ways to get involved in helping to protect the natural environment. Just as a reminder, both Nicola and Claire will be in their own breakout rooms at the end as well. So if you want to join them, you can message Sarah Jordan from the Biosphere now in the chat, and we'll get them set up during the next talk as well, which is from Professor Tim Coles from the business school here at the University of Exeter. Tim's going to provide a sort of overview of what he thinks the future of tourism is going to look like. I'll just spotlight you now, Tim, and you should be ready to go.
That's great. Thank you, Ian. Thank you, everyone, for your time this morning. I think I was given perhaps a short straw this morning. Thanks, Ian, for moving on. I probably can't cover anything in any great detail in 10 minutes. There's so much to unpack. But I think I understand the sentiment behind this is trying to understand a little bit more about what's going to happen to the tourism sector once COVID is perhaps under control. And I guess really one of the take-home messages this morning from the news agenda is just how fluid and uncertain this is going to be, because I think when I was thinking about this presentation over the weekend, my thoughts were slightly different than they are this morning with news that you know, there's a sort of welcome development in vaccines on the way. So just thinking about these, there's so much out there, there's so much discussion, so much speculation, so many assumptions. What I decided to do was be typically academic and think about this as a student question. So that's really dull and boring, I realise, but one way I thought about it was just there is so much being discussed about this, so much data being generated that I imagine that people in the sector are going to find it extremely difficult just to keep on top of everything that's going on at the moment. So, you know, I was thinking about, well, what do we know? What are the known knowns? And I don't really want to sound like Donald Rumsfeld. You know, what are the known unknowns? And what are the unknown unknowns? And when you start to think about it in this sort of way, the most important sense is to think about it in terms of a stakeholder-based view and a time and an event-based view, which I'll move on to in a second. But I also wanted to point out, and this hasn't gone away, some of my early research in 2001, if you can cast your minds back that far, involved foot and mouth disease and the closure of the countryside from February 2001. And some of my early work in 2001 looked at how September the 11th for some small businesses represented a bit of a lifeline at the end of an otherwise really desperate 2001. And we tend to think about crises like COVID as being just one crisis that just happened. But we are actually dealing with another crisis at the moment. It's not obviously a public health crisis, it's a political crisis. And all of the things that we're trying to do to counteract and to predict the future with respect to COVID are coincidental with other changes that are going to be quite fundamental related to Brexit. So I think I don't want to be the harbinger of doom, but I think I should highlight those coincidences. So next slide, Ian. So as I say, I thought I could take two views on this and offer two sets of insights. The first was to suggest, well, future for whom? And when you start to unpack it, what you begin to realize is that the operating environment is going to become more complex and it's going to become more challenging. And I am very lucky and very fortunate to get the emails almost every day, more than once a day, from the Tourism Alliance and Kurt Janssen in London. And I just find it absolutely staggering the amount of information that's being produced for tourism businesses in the sector. And And it strikes me that what's happening is things are becoming so complicated to operate and to operate safely, and this is really quite a challenge. It's a challenge to stay operating. You know, some of the business sentiment surveys that the ONS produces suggest that, you know, not surprisingly, the hospitality industry is most hard hit by the coronavirus pandemic. It also suggests that, you know, if there is a vaccine, and if we start going back to visitation on a mass, in mass numbers or large numbers, let's put it that way, that one of the really interesting things is the extent to which people may or may not be vaccinated. And in some respects, the tourism and hospitality sector becoming the new front line. You know, the Johnson comment that one person's cough is perhaps another person's death is you know, quite salutary, really. So moving forward, you know, the future, I think, is more complex for tourism businesses, and the nature of the sector is going to be different. And we know that from, you know, obviously what's happening to businesses at the moment and all of the interventions that government is trying to make to support businesses. But what we tend to forget and lose sight of is that it's not just the travel and tourism industry, those sort of core businesses that we equate with tourism, but there's a whole infrastructure and levels of supply chains that support tourism that we aren't throwing a spotlight on, and that are actually being hit quite significantly. So I think that there's quite a lot of uncertainty still for tourism businesses. There's a lot of uncertainty and difficulty for visitors. So, you know, there's an argument that, you know, visitors might not necessarily want to travel internationally. And there are lots and lots of sentiment research and trackers out there suggesting that we might actually travel more within the UK. But the question is, you know, where and when? And I think at the moment, what's really interesting for next summer is the extent to which, you know, bookings are perhaps being deferred at the moment. There is an assumption that we'll go back to having a peak period, and that we'll be able to accommodate more than ever demand that's substituted from international visits into domestic visits, and we'll be able to accommodate all of that in the UK. So, you know, that's quite an interesting challenge in terms of capacity, occupancy, and pricing. It's also a challenge for destinations and communities. So, you know, just at the moment, we're talking about bubbles and the extent to which people can go to second homes or caravans or private rented accommodation over the Christmas period. But what we've seen through coronavirus is certain unease about, you know, large numbers of visitors coming into destinations and what they may or may not necessarily bring with them, and the behaviours of people. So, you know, looking at tourism, you know, post-COVID, you know, will behaviours be responsible in a public health sense as well as in the perhaps sustainable development sense that the previous speakers have been talking about? And then finally, the future for government. And I think that what's really interesting here is that, you know, the support has been quite clear, and, you know, there've been quite a lot of interventions, as many of you probably know just as well as I do. What's interesting is that, you know, for government, the narrative is very much along the lines of making sure that we continue to grow. So the Global Travel Task Force has just reported, and its headline is, we want to increase demand safely. It's not gone away, but there's a tourism sector deal post-Brexit, and we're looking at a 23% increase in inbound by 2025 and a 3% increase per annum in terms of domestic visitors. So I think that government is very much looking after COVID in the sense of, well, here's a sector that's very much going to be able to mitigate some of the negative effects of Brexit on the economy. So Ian, the next slide, please. So my final slide is the future when. And I started to think about this. I've been working on this actually with students at the university and thinking about, you know, what's happening in various countries and at what particular moment. I've just picked out two particular dates, 2021, the here and now. You know, it may be that it's too soon to talk about what's going to happen next year. But I think one of the really interesting things is, you know, my suggestion is that over the period 21 to 24, there's going to be a normalization. And I suspect that, you know, with all the pent up demand and what all the sentiment trackers are saying at the moment is that people want to travel. And, you know, certainly my own research is suggesting that people want to travel and get back to what they used to do in the old normal. And clearly there's a need to modify behaviours with respect to sustainability. There's also going to be an additional need to modify behaviours in terms of public health attitudes and ensuring that that tourism doesn't become any more of a vector for coronavirus than it already has been. And we're faced with challenges. You know, Brexit's happened, the transition period's about to change. All we're doing in 2021 is adding further complexity. So we've just introduced the points-based immigration scheme. There's talk of the bonfire of regulations, and I'm not entirely sure at the moment how that will impact, or whether in some sort of deal, a last-minute deal, the package tourism directives will survive. There's discussion about how we'll necessarily continue with lower VAT rates. And on top of all of this, just before COVID, there was the issue of business rates re-evaluation, you know, all of which doesn't really help competitiveness in the short term. So my final point is, looking at 2024, you know, where we'll be in 2024, there's an awful lot of discussion about green recovery without a lot of substance behind it. And my suggestion, based on looking at what happened in the past and the coincidence of crises effect, is that effectively government is looking for a reversion to business as planned. So not necessarily business as normal in 2019, but in terms of business as planned as we go through the fixed term of our parliament, come out of it at the back end. You know, we may have got to our destination by a different route, but I suspect there is a political will to get to the destination, and that destination includes significant growth in the tourism sector, and beyond. Beyond that, who knows? But it's quite a challenge to think that if you look back to 1969 and the development of Tourism Act, which was very much trying to boost tourism, since then, if you wanted to look at the number of crises, you know, many of us won't remember, you know, a lot of the crises and a lot of the events. What we will remember is that between 1969 and today, the unwavering trend has been growth. And so, you know, the question is the extent to which in 2024 and 2029, how much will we actually remember of 2020, and just like how much do we remember of 2001 and foot and mouth? Thank you, Ian. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for that, Tim. So now we are going to go into questions and answers and breakout. So what we're going to do is I'm going to bring Sarah Jordan up and spotlight Sarah, and Sarah's going to run the questions and answers. Have we assigned the breakouts, Sarah?
Yeah, so I've got a couple of people wanting to have a chat with Jenny, and also with Claire from Plastic Free. So I'm going to open up those breakout rooms now and get those started. If anybody would like to speak to Jenny or Claire or Dan or Nicola, then please do send me a message and I can add you in. But I'll start those breakout rooms now so that they can get going. Okay. Great. So we should have a few people disappear now.
I'm just asking our any of the panelists that if they can unmute themselves as well. Who are we missing? Carey.
Jenny. Jenny's in a breakout room now.
Oh yeah, of course.
And so is Claire. Yeah.
So have you been monitoring any questions that have come up, Sarah?
Yeah, so the only question we had was regarding the surveys and when they took place, which I answered. The surveys that we did were in conjunction with Petroc students. We did those from from April to September last year, and it was you know, different timings. So sometimes we did them in weekend days, and sometimes we did them on weekdays. Sometimes it was during a peak sort of like a bank holiday. Sometimes it was just a general day. So we did get quite a wide range of visitor types that we were surveying. So that was one of the answers to that question. That's the only one that we had coming up throughout. So if anybody does have any other questions, then we are open to them now.
Sarah, can you hear me? It's Martin here.
Oh, hi Martin, you should be in a room.
I should, yeah, but I
You
can't. Ian has stopped my video, and you've got this lovely picture of a surfer there. And
we have. Hang on, I'll move you to. Oh no, you're already in there. I'll bring you out, and then.
Oh, right, here we go. Start my video. I'm now a real person. Okay.
You are.
I'll go and join the breakout room.
Have you got the button there to be able to join now? Yeah, great.
Thanks.
All right. Thanks, Martin.
I have a question for Dan at the Exmoor. I was just really interested in learning more about the Dark Sky initiative and how businesses can relate to that as well.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, it's back in 2011 we were designated Europe's first dark sky reserve. It's an international designation, and we found it's a really good tool to engage with visitors because it kind of ticks all the boxes. It promotes out of season opportunities, it promotes a low impact sustainable form of tourism, and it offers something an exceptionally unique experience. So you know, we all know of the problems of light pollution, and you know, a visitor coming from somewhere like Bristol might experience kind of 10, 15, 20 stars in the night sky on a clear day, if they're or clear night, I should say, if they're lucky. Within Exmoor, you can see the Milky Way. With the naked eye, you could see 2,000 to 3,000 stars. So it's something we're always keen to push. We've actually got a project on at the moment where we've been offering tourism providers some more bespoke training in astronomy, so that they have more confidence to actually kind of share the experiences with others. And as part of that, we've also been setting up the Dark Sky Friendly Business Scheme. So it's a fairly simple accreditation whereby we just ask you to do an audit of your lighting to make sure that any kind of security lights are set to timers, etc., that they're shielded, so the light is pointing to where it's needed and not just overspilling, which is, you know, it's not about banning lighting, and that's always something we're keen to kind of get across, but it is about managing our lighting rather than banning it. And there's some very simple small steps that people can take, and if they do that, and if they can show that they are also engaging their visitors in the dark skies, then they can become a dark sky friendly business scheme. So there's details on our website. I can circulate details as well to Sarah to circulate to anybody that's interested.
Thanks, Dan. We've had another question for you, actually. Where are we? Yeah. So Rob from Linton Cliff Railway understood that this the Exmoor Partner Scheme was on temporary hold, but is this available again now?
Yeah, hi Rob. Yes and no, I guess is a simple answer. Ben, it's in its existence. What we are doing though is just refining the application process to make it a bit simpler and easier for people. We haven't quite just had a chance, other events have overtaken us to get the new application form uploaded to a website. So that should be there in the next kind of few weeks. But Rob, I'm happy to take it up with you offline. And if anybody else wants to kind of get in contact, if you're interested, you know, we can make sure that we alert you as soon as the new forms are available.
Thanks, Dan. So I've not received any other questions so far. So if anybody does want to speak to any of our speakers, either in a breakout room or if you have a question, please do type it up in the chat and we can ask for you, or I can send me a message and I can pop you into a breakout room with one of our speakers. Andy's giving me a wave. Hello, Andy.
Hello. Yeah, I just wanted to ask if there was anybody in the audience had any feelings about what we should do with this tourism app. Because the idea was to see how we can give people up-to-date information as they come into the area, as well as before they get into the area, on what they can do and how we can sort of, if you like, spread the crowds. So we're not causing problems anywhere, particularly with COVID. So if anybody has any ideas on what they think the app should contain and how it should run, I'd love to hear from them. That includes the panel as well as the audience.
Can you maybe explain a little bit more about the app, Andy? Just a summary.
Essentially, what we're trying to do is, in the first place, was look at those sensitive sites and say, well, how do we move people around those sites and give them the information that means that they aren't causing any damage to those sites, so we can help with the capacity, if you like, of those particular soft sites, whether it's Braunton Burrows or some of the Heathland sites or whatever. And what that is evolved to now is a need to actually do that right across the whole area. So as well as promoting sort of best practice and what people can do, going to natural sites or cultural sites, but also promote the activities as well. So it links to what we'll have on our website, but the app will be something that is much more real-time data on traffic, for example, or weather conditions, which means that, well, it's gridlocked in Braunton, therefore why not take this route and visit this beach instead, or come inland and visit RHS Rosemore and do this here, learn about ancient woodlands and that sort of thing. So it's to give people sort of different ideas and opportunities on the hoof, so that it just sort of relieves some of those bad experiences, that we don't have people sort of leaving North Devon thinking, well, I'm not going to go there again because it's too bloody crowded.
Thank you. Mike from the Cozy Cowshed / Cozy Tree Houses has given us some suggestions. It would have been nice to ask to bring him in really, but I know he's got his young daughter there as well, so he's going to stay on mute. But he says the app would be good to have things to do in the area on there, and also nature related within the biosphere, within maps, and also opening times of places. So that might be good for us to put inside that.
Yeah. And I just had a question there from Marianne, who suggested that many of the visitors that she has for breakfast, that's where they could go for the day. And she also thinks that tailor those activities according to the personas that Ian described as well. So it's good information.
Great, some good ideas there.
Yeah, so those personas are quite close to finishing now. They just need a kind of a personal touch to them as well, in the sense that, you know, we should probably put some photos on there, possibly give them names as well, you know, just so that they're more relatable. But yeah, they're as good as finished as far as the analysis behind them is concerned. They just need a little bit of final touch. But yeah, I agree that having them, you know, related on the app would be great as well.
Great. We've just had another question. Okay, Rob is asking, whilst we have a few experts on the discussion, could I present an idea for leaflets and printing? Is an idea that I am wondering if could be driven forward. Rob, do you want to come in and talk to us? Can we unmute Rob?
Yeah.
Get some more information from him.
You should have a, there we go.
Oh yeah.
Okay, yes, can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
Hi Rob.
Hi, it was just, it was driven really part by COVID this year. We print 250,000 leaflets a year for distributing to stands, and we use recyclable leaflets and inks and things, and we try and print only what we need. But we were wondering whether there's any way in creating some sort of virtual leaflet stands where we can create a leaflet where people could scan with their phone, and then it's dropped into their phone. It would give businesses a massive flexibility to change, because all of our leaflets were obsolete by March that we had printed because of our opening times, and our pricing and everything changed, all our events changed. It would reduce all the printing. It would reduce all the transport and distribution of those leaflets and the waste of those leaflets. And I didn't know whether it was an idea that's ever been raised or thought about. not as an app or a website, just a physical stand with like a scannable QR code in the normal places.
Nicola wants to come.
Hi, can I, I'm muted. Yeah, that's a really good idea from Rob, actually, because as you know, I'm doing some work for the Braunton Countryside Centre. So one of the things we've been looking at is how we can develop more online assets. So we've been looking at doing things like using the QR code. So we've been using an online app called Commute. So that is a GPS linked app which you can download on your phone. And it's really great. So you can follow a self-guided route, but also you can put lots of information and photos into that. So that's fantastic. And then the other thing we've been looking at is developing things like ebooks and e-leaflets that people can download from our website. Yeah, so I think that's a really good idea from Rob.
Thank you, Nicola. And Dan is raising his hand as well to talk. Thanks, Nicola.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think it's a really good idea, and we need to look into it a bit more about what the possibilities are. I think the challenge, and I don't want to be negative because I do generally think it's a great idea, but certainly our surveys have found that whilst people like online information prior to their visit, once they're in the area, still the dominating factor actually is printed material. That's what people are after still. You know, they've come on holiday, they perhaps don't want to be glued to a phone all the time. There's obviously all the issues that particularly the rural areas have with connectivity and signals as well, battery life if you're going out for the day, and actually people do almost like that idea of just sitting down at the end of the day and browsing through some leaflets, deciding what they do the next day. So I think it's a great idea, and I think there's certainly some opportunities, but we would just need to bear that in mind as well.
Yeah. Thank you, Dan. Marianne has found very few people actually use the QR code for test and trace. She has a lot of older people visiting, so I think that's also something to bear in mind. From me personally, before COVID, the QR codes were out, and I wasn't one to use them, but so I was always a bit, well, nobody's going to use that. But actually, since COVID, I have started to use QR codes a lot more and found them quite easy. But I completely understand what Marianne is saying, and that a lot of older people may not want to use those QR codes. So that's certainly something that we need to bear in mind.
Yeah. Just following on from that as well,
yeah.
Nicola's put a question in for me. Where do the personas get their information? We did actually ask that in the survey.
Yes.
We're in a bit of an awkward situation where I can't quickly jump and check because I'm recording the session. But I think that there's a general trend that you know echoes what people are saying here as well, that the older groups, they prefer the printed material and the use of tourist information sites, and then the younger that they get, the more likely they are to engage in digital advertisement and technology. There was a couple of outliers to that, and I would have to double check them, but we do have that information. The question that we asked was, how did you find out about the area, rather than what you do when you're here. But we could take those trends and suggest that they would do the same thing while they were here than how they found out about it in the first place. But Nicola, if you want to sort of carry this conversation on and talk about your experience as well, that would be great as well. Do I need to unmute you? Is that?
Sorry, you want me to talk about it now? I thought you meant offline. Yes, yeah. Well, we actually did a survey, which was over August and September. So there was, as you say, there was a real difference between the types of people that came. And what surprised us, as once you got to September, past obviously the holiday period, obviously you had the families during the holidays, which we knew about. But then there's this huge swathe of people come in September. The baby boomers and the people who were retired, and we didn't really realise, the sort of difference in those personas. So, I think looking at how we market things is going to be really different for those different personas.
Yeah. I also have a question for Tim as well. It looks like the chat's sort of dried up. Could you talk a little bit about possibly what the future is for rural tourism in particular, rather than urban tourism, and what trends you've seen through the COVID crisis around that as well?
Thanks, Ian. I'm just going to come in about, I've just been reflecting on the discussion about the QR code, so I will answer your question in a second. And I think Anne-Marie raises quite an interesting question, as did Rob. And, you know, you've sort of picked up on this in terms of personas and which personas get different, you know, use different data sources. And I'm not entirely sure that it's an all or nothing, you know, response necessarily. So, you know, with different demographics, you know, clearly it's absolutely correct. You know, we do attract people who are less familiar with and less interested in using QR codes. But what strikes me in some of the printing demands, you know, just so many leaflets being produced, is that, you know, if you can halve the number of leaflets, or if you can, you know, reduce it by a quarter, you know, then the physical savings in resources is, you know, is great. So, if, you know, it may not necessarily be, you know, just, well, we can do one or the other, but I'm sure there can be a more integrated approach to this, such that, you know, we can think more intelligently about, you know, the different demographics and groups of people and how much they're responsive to QR codes and who does want to remain connected. So to think that, you know, yes, you know, I probably do fall into the category who doesn't want to be connected, as Dan says. I want to, you know, I'm quite happy with paper and the artifact, but I've also noticed that lots of people do want to be connected, even in slow places, you know, slow connectivity places. So it's a very interesting challenge, but I think anything that reduces the resource burden is quite an you know, helpful thing. And then in response to something that Andy was talking about earlier in terms of apps, I've traveled quite extensively in Germany, and I'm just amazed at the extent of real-time information that I'm able to get on everything from, you know, trains to parking to what facilities available. One of the things that's really interested me as a visitor, so I live in mid-Devon, and I've made it to North Devon, you know, even with the lockdown restrictions. You know, I've just been amazed at the number of people who have visited places like Braunton Burrows. And, you know, there have been times when we've been there and, you know, parking has been almost impossible. So my question is, you know, if we can actually get real-time information in cities like Exeter on parking, why can't we get real-time information in rural areas, you know, and get that on an app? So, you know, I think that's quite an interesting, you know, the more information and the more we can empower visitors in a cost-effective way, I think, you know, probably the better it's going to be for, you know, particularly that part of Devon. And it's really interesting, isn't it, Ian, if we look at the rural-urban interface, and, you know, one of the things we've had a discussion with, you know, when I've joined your group at the university is how there's quite a different, you know, discussion about tourism in rural environments versus urban environments. When you know, look at some of the debates nationally, you know, it tends to get a bit dominated by, you know, where do our international visitors come from, and where do they go to? You know, mainly located in London, and London has very different supply chains and behaviours to the rest of the country. And, you know, one of the things I've been wondering about is the extent to which, for example, you know, agricultural come tourism businesses that have clearly diversified and have been encouraged to diversify, you know, how are they going to feel about visitors coming back and visitor behaviours? You know, so that's been something that I've been quite interested in as I've been walking through the countryside, is, you know, walking through rural properties has been quite a variation in approaches to how that's been managed. And I'm obviously quite concerned about what's happening in the wider supply chains. And I think what's being lost in some of the discussion about hospitality is, you know, the focus is on hotels, it's on, you know, accommodation, it's on attractions and so on. And what we're losing sight of is that, as I say, we have a wider travel and tourism economy, and that's being hit particularly hard. You know, so we already had a situation where lots of pubs were under pressure before COVID and closures were rife. some of them have very marginal business models in rural areas with, less passerby trade. So one of the, challenges, and one of the things I'm concerned about is, can we maintain some of that essential infrastructure to be able to start up again afterwards, or, what's going to be the lag? What we don't know is, which businesses, quite horrifically have not survived, whose livelihoods have been damaged, where have those been damaged? We don't know, about if there's a rural urban discrepancy and how big the magnitude of that is. So it's quite an interesting research question or dilemma that we're faced at the moment. But I think a lot of our discussion about tourism is focused on either London and big cities or coastal destinations. What we've tended not to think about is, the rural forms, quite a significant component of what we provide, certainly in this region, but more widely across the UK.
Thanks for that, Tim. We've actually had a bit of a spurt of...
I saw that, yeah.
Coming in.
Because I was so boring and everybody...
No, not at all. I think
people talk about other things, so
processing this
I've had to catalyse that.
Just processing this idea around getting, this leaflet QR code debate going. Sarah, do you want to sort of go through some of those responses?
Yeah, so I think... Where should I start? There we go. Oh, so I've done that one. Oh, okay, let me just start off by talking about Andy had asked about the map, because I've just got I just want to do that one and then I can go in order. So Charlotte from Smitham is saying that it would be good to have attractions pinned and colour coded so that traffic lifted or something to show how busy it is, or webcams that can be viewed on the app. So I think that's a really good idea for the map, Andy. I don't know if you agree. Yeah, great. And then moving on to leaflets then, from the question from Rob. Marianne has said, oh, I've already done that one about older people visiting, but Charlotte also agrees from Smitham, saying they also found that as they had older guests, and they also find that families send their children to collect leaflets, and then once the children have got them, they're just disposed of and not really looked at or read. So people do tend to look on the internet. So that was...
Can I come in there, Sarah, please?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
One of the things we're not perhaps thinking about, so when I went back to teaching in the university, there was quite a significant amount of training that we had to do in terms of what we're allowed to do in terms of in-person teaching. And one of the things that we're really not encouraged to do is hand out paper-based items, and I think that's not coming into the discussion at the moment.
Yes.
And I respect all of the all of the interventions that people have made in the chat. They're all really super interesting. Yeah. But at the moment, paper might actually be an impossibility. Digital might be the better public health. Well, in fact, it is the better public health option. The exchange of these things, that they can act as a medium. Yeah, thanks for bringing that in, Tim. Yeah, completely agree. And moving on from that, then Rob has said we could possibly have a hybrid leaflet station where there are some leaflets and also a QR code available on the stand. So I'm guessing if we're still in this situation with COVID, the leaflets can just be removed and the QR code can remain. Moving on from that. I mean, Sarah, can I just come in again on this, because there is a space here. One of the really interesting things is the amount of innovation that's been going on during the COVID pandemic. Yeah. And 10 years ago, I was approached by somebody at the university who basically was working on non-touch screens. So you could actually, so you see it on Star Trek, you could shift things by the motion of your hands, motion detected tables and tablets. And these were around 10, 15 years ago. There's no reason why information points cannot be print on demand, because even back then what we could do was we could actually set it up so you could put your hand next to print, press print, and do you want a leaflet, physical print, and it comes out. So, the tech does exist, and I think that the challenge for us all is to think creatively about how to innovate to be able to do this, to be able to either meet the older people or the younger people who want physical leaflets, or we can print it on demand rather than having to take a print run of 250,000 or however many. The challenge is being able to take some of the tech that we already have and repurpose it, or alternatively to develop new tech. And what's been really interesting looking at some of the stories in the summer is the extent to which people have been able to innovate new ideas and new safety measures. I'm thinking about the special door that the Big Sheep developed. So this isn't beyond our ability to be able to solve it.
That's really good. Good for you to bring in there, Tim. Thank you so much for that. That's certainly something that we can be thinking about moving forward. And what a great idea as well. I didn't realise that tech was available. So for you to say that it's been available for the last 10 years, it's certainly something that we could be starting to look into and to use.
Yeah.
Who else have I had?
I'm just thinking, Sarah, I'm just being aware of time. We have run over a little bit.
Okay.
I was wondering if you wanted to bring the give the breakout rooms their warnings.
Okay.
And I'll just quickly go through a couple more responses.
Yep.
So Tom from Skern has said physical leaflets contain information that doesn't change, e.g. location, with a QR code on the leaflet that links to the information that does change, so the seasonal products and things like that. This will give the leaflets, a greater shelf life. So I agree that could be quite a good solution there. And then Andy suggested that the Biosphere avoid using information panels because the information does get outdated quite quickly. And then Dan from Exmoor, but we perhaps need to distinguish between inspiration and info. There may still be a role for leaflets for scaled down leaflets to inspire, pointing to online resources. Yeah, so a very similar message to Tom there, that we could have, leaflets that give the basic information and then have QR codes which you can change seasonally. So I think that is quite a good middle ground there between sort of physical and digital still. Yeah, I think that unless anyone has any burning questions on a different subject, what we'll do is we'll get the breakout rooms in here and then sort of wrap this up as well, because well, it's been a fascinating couple of hours. We didn't plan it to be a couple of hours, but thank you everyone for sticking around till the end. I hope people have learned some valuable things from that.
Oh, sorry.
Here they come.
Andy,
I thought maybe you could say some final words from the Biosphere's perspective about what the future of BCHT is, just really quickly, just to put you on the spot there.
Nothing like being put on the spot. No, but it has been a fascinating session, and thanks everybody and all the partners for contributing that. I'm sorry there just wasn't more time to take all of those discussions on further, but it is always good to work with partners like the Park and the AONB and Plastic Free North Devon and 361 in how we sort of deliver a much more stronger sustainable tourism package within North Devon. We still want to work with partners over the next year, where we have, this is the kind of final year of that BCHT funding. We've still got demonstration projects to run, and they're on Lundy with Rosemore, continue with Braunton Countryside Centre. There is the Ashridge project up in Simmons Bath. We've got woodland tourism happening inland, and there is another one which escapes me for now. But there's all those projects coming on, plus the master planning and how we get the local authorities supporting new infrastructure, for example, based on the master planning, the findings we have from our work with the University of Exeter. So BCHT is probably going to continue, not in that same name, because it was a name that was just invented for the project. So we're actually trying to work with Adeline to get a more sellable term for it, but it's about experiential tourism that just sort of gets the best out of our environment for the visitors that come, and has a better income for the area and the tourism industry. So this is going to continue as a theme going forward. So we look forward to working with people, you know, follow up with all the different partners we have here. It's all going to be good. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for that, everyone, and thanks for coming again. Yeah, bye for now.